The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
And welcome back again, wrestling fans, the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. Jason Bryan here with you with news, reviews, previews, and interviews, and things that I didn't really like to do growing up, but I realized in my old age or my older age or my getting elder age, I need to do more reading. And I've got a stack of wrestling books here in my office as I've sit there. I've gone through a couple of them each year, and I just finished one called Trailblazer when I was on my flight to the Gold Coast down in Australia to announce the Commonwealth Games. That book, Pathfinder Volume 1, by our guest today, Kevin Emily. He's a high school wrestling coach in South Carolina. We'll talk about the book and some things around South Carolina wrestling shortly. First of all, Kevin, welcome to the program. It's been overdue.
Hey, thank you so very much, Jason. I really appreciate you having me on your show.
So you're a coach at Midland Valley High School in Graniteville, South Carolina. By the name of the town, it sounds like it's a tough place, Graniteville, right there on the Georgia-South Carolina line, just northeast of Augusta. And we kind of have to start this out on a little bit of a somber note, as one of your wrestlers passed away as we record this on April 27th earlier in the week. Jaquez Hurst, and interesting backstory on him. As you told us before we started, that not really sure why he just fell asleep and didn't wake up one day. But what are some things that his memory are going to be long lasting within the wrestling program there?
Well, the thing that I remember most about, we call him JQ. The thing I remember most about JQ is that as a freshman last year, like I said, no one in Aiken County had wrestled before, and he was a good athlete, but he was still trying to learn. He was a freshman, and so he would get his butt kicked almost every single time. And I just said, JQ, don't quit. And he's like, I'm not going to quit, coach. And, he started varsity for me, and he finally started turning the curve right about towards the end of the season. He started winning some matches, and you could see his confidence build up. And it was just so unique for all of my guys because, like I said, they've never wrestled before. And to watch him grow and see him learn, and to see that, when he was getting hammered by some of these guys at these other tournaments, and he still kept coming back. And that's what I remember about him most, is that he stuck with it. And, he was at 113 pounds last year. When he showed up at school this year, JQ was probably walking around at 140 pounds. He had hit the weight so hard, I didn't even recognize him for like the first 3 weeks of school. I was like, has anybody seen JQ? My coach, he's walking around. And I said, where? They go, there he is. And I mean, he had hit it hard. He was ready. And that's what I appreciate about him the most, was that he was just always willing to give it his all, and no matter how tough the competition was, he just kept going at it and kept working hard. And that's, he reminded myself of me when I was a freshman. I knew I had the potential, but I didn't win very many matches at all, and that's why I tried to work so hard with him, and he accepted that. And that's what I remember about him the most.
You're in a part of the country where football rules, and JQ, he's got a pretty good bloodline there. A guy named Garrison Hurst, who our football fans may know, was a standout running back at the University of Georgia. And you had alluded to that Aiken County didn't have wrestling, so this was a story that actually hit our news feed last year, that Aiken County as a whole was starting wrestling. But what about it made you kind of say, you know what, this is where I want to be? If this county's starting wrestling, I need to be there to help these kids.
Because the interesting thing is, with Aiken County, you have so many NFL football players that come out of this Aiken County area. Obviously, they all go to college, so you're talking all SEC, all ACC, just walking out of the 7 different high schools in this area. So, we all, most wrestling fans, we know the correlation between wrestling and football. And so this was an untapped gold mine. And so I took a look at it. I mean, my folks live here. They live in down by Myrtle Beach. And so it had opportunity for me to come on back home. And I just said, you know what? This is the place that I think I need to be. And, obviously I had one wrestler last year, but he ended up taking fourth in the state this year, only his second year wrestling. And, so it's fun. It's fun coaching these kids because they're already tough. The football team 2 years before I got here took second in state. So I knew there was a winning tradition. And then the basketball team won the state championship the year before I got here. So I knew that Midland Valley was the right place. And slowly but surely, it's like last year we only had one state qualifier at the state tournament, which was my kid, my 132. This year, Aiken County had 7 state qualifiers in the difference in 1 year. All it was the kids kind of finding their way. And once they found their way, I mean, we showed up at the state tournament this year. We had 2 guys place. One took third, and my guy took fourth. Next year, it's going to be even better. And it's just fun to kind of watch when we show up someplace. We travel a lot. So when we go someplace and we see another Aiken County team, we root each other on because we have a lot of pride, or we have a lot on the line. And we're not the average second-year wrestlers anymore. Like I said, because these kids are going to be suiting up on Saturday and pretty soon on Sundays. And so it's pretty cool to watch.
So what you talked about, you had family there. So where were you prior to Midland Valley?
I went back home. I grew up in Waterloo, Iowa. And after I left, I went to a JUCO, Merrimack, and wrestled for a semester. And then I walked on to UT Chat. But my whole adolescent life was in Waterloo, Iowa. So I was born down in Georgetown by Myrtle Beach. And so folks, my dad got a job at John Deere. So eventually while I was in college, they moved back home. And so the last 2 years before I moved back here, I was at West High School, which is the home of Dan Gable. We call it is Dan Gable High. But I was the head coach at Waterloo West High School in Waterloo, Iowa, before I came down here to Midland Valley.
So it was a little bit of a reintroduction to not just Southern wrestling, but just the whole Southern culture as a whole. I'm from Virginia originally, so I've got family.
Okay.
I got family in South Carolina, and I've spent some time down in that part of the country. And
Gotcha.
I've brought some of those things here. I brought the grits. I brought the sweet tea. So I'm bringing some of the best cuisine that I know how to make. But what was it like?
That's all you need.
Yeah. What was it like reacclimating to the area, knowing that you've got to readjust, but you've also got to adjust a set of kids in an entire portion of this state that have never stepped on a wrestling mat before, not just the ones you're coaching at your high school, but the entire county.
Right. It was like this. I've coached my kids club since 1999. And, with kids clubs, you always have little kids who've never wrestled before. Well, I tried to approach it from that angle, except for the fact that these kids were young adults, but we had to go strictly back to the basics. And it was the entire team. It wasn't just, 1 or 2 wrestlers. And so it was interesting. The thing that I noticed I had to do, I had to scale back my practices. I had to, and while I was teaching, I get animated when I'm showing moves, and I get ahead of myself. And these past 2 years, I had to specifically slow down because I had to realize, okay, Kevin, these kids don't know what you're talking about. And I would have to catch myself. So I had to condition myself to not get too far ahead of myself. And then once they kind of got in the groove, then they started watching videos. And I would give them instructional videos. And I'd say, hey, watch this guy. Watch this guy. Make sure you guys watch the NCAAs. Make sure we're going to wrestling camp. So now, because they're such great athletes, that they get it. They take pride in what they do. So now they're talking wrestling lingo. You know what I mean? Last year it was, so I grabbed this leg. This year, coach, I'm going to hit the sweep single. I'm going to hit the inside single. You know what I mean? So it's pretty cool. And I look at them at school and I watch them walk around, and you know how we got a kind of a hunched back, and you can tell them doing our push-ups and pull-ups and stuff, and they're starting to look like wrestlers. And that makes me proud when I look at them when they're walking down the hall. I'm like, yeah, that's a wrestler. So just things like that, it's just the small things that make me happy. And we did good this year as a team. In the first round of the state duels, we knocked off the number 10 ranked team in the state in the first round. My guys, we weren't even ranked. So my guys are ready. It just took 1 year to get it under our belt. And, sky's the limit for these guys. We just got to take it one day at a time.
there's two conversations that need to happen when you're talking about wrestling and bringing kids into it in pretty much any school system. One is, as you've talked about with the solid athletic traditions, there is the football coach who, a lot of these places that don't really come with the wrestling background here as, I don't want my guys losing weight, especially with your linemen, and you want them big and strong. And then the other is with the parents who doesn't want to see little Johnny get beat up in front of his friends at school. So let's first talk about the conversations that you had with the football coaches there. And did you have to sell them on wrestling, or was that an easy sell?
Nope. Easy sell, because the football coach was a standout heavyweight wrestler in about an hour away in another small town, which has a really, really good wrestling team. So done deal. Before I even moved back here, he was telling his guys, I want all my linemen to wrestle. So it was, this year, I started out the year, I think I had 6 heavyweights at the beginning of school, beginning of wrestling season. Yes. And when we would weigh in, they'd look and they'd say, how the heck do you guys have so many heavyweights? I'm like, man, my football coach encourages these guys to come out. Yeah, it was insane, man. And with the OPC and the weight descent program, I assured the coach, hey, listen, weight cutting is not an issue. If they've got some body fat they need to get rid of, then fine. I said, but my motto is this, and it wasn't my motto when I was wrestling in college or high school. I want my guys to be fat and happy, and because we work out hard, we do our circuit training, and then I push the guys, but I don't want to make it wrestling. And I say this, wrestling is not a fun sport. Winning is fun. Practice is not fun. So I pushed the guys, but, when I was in high school, I was cutting 20 pounds, and it wasn't even a big deal because I wrestled 112. If I wanted to wrestle, I had to cut that 20. There's no way I would want to do that now, or obviously make my kids do that now. It's not fun. And, especially a sport that has never been in this county, you got to find a way to make it fun. And so, I had to teach them the discipline of cutting weight because they were freaking out. How am I going to lose 5 pounds in a week, coach? And I said, guys, just be patient. You have to diet. I said, you lose 2 or 3 pounds in a practice. And once they finally understood that, and I showed them what the weight descent program was, that was fine. Taking the beat down, that was okay because the parents at Midland Valley High School, they're behind it 100%. They're like, this is going to make my kid better. And it was new to them. They're in the moms are up in the stands squirming and I can't watch this. By the time we were done, they were going with us everywhere we went. And that's what made it fun. I believe I've got the toughest kids in the county. And another coach might say something different, but my kids are tough and they can take a beating. The thing that I have to do with them though is do damage control when there's been some times when we got thumped. And so I had to build them back up. I didn't tear them down because they're in uncharted waters. They're like, man, they didn't say these guys are better than us, but they knew that they knew more moves. But the simple fact that my kids were athletes and were used to winning, there wasn't, and you're going to have kids that quit every season, but there was no quit in my core crew. There was all fight. And so, no, the getting twisted up and mangled, it's all good. We rolled with the punches on that. And I didn't have any problems as far as, I'm afraid my son or daughter is going to get hurt. I had a starting, my 120 was a female, and they were worried when I first moved down here. They were like, now our boys aren't going to get hurt, are they? I said, you can get hurt easier in football than you can in wrestling. And worse in football. So it was a pretty easy sell on that once they watched my practice and they knew I knew what I was doing. And that was the main thing, You can tell if a coach knows what he's doing or not. And then, they kind of walk through the cafeteria because every high school in this county practices in the cafeteria. And so they, the principal would poke his head in there, the athletic director would look in, and now they're pretty confident. I mean, they're all, Midland Valley Wrestling strong. So that's how that took place.
So you talked about the fight and the struggle and the things that your kids had, and you chronicled the fight of numerous wrestlers in your books. Pathfinder, you've got Volume 1 and Volume 2. I read Volume 1, as I said earlier in the program, and it's chronicles the careers of multiple African-American wrestlers, which you started getting the idea around Black History Month one year. And for those who haven't figured this out by now, you're African-American, so I don't think we mentioned that because,
yes.
I mean, it's, we're talking wrestling, so it's not like it's like today's guest is a black man. No, it's not like that.
Right.
But let's talk a little bit about Pathfinder, the idea and what it went from, idea in your head to, to project to actually getting this thing bound and sitting here. And right now, my paperback version, I know you've got them for sale at optionalstart.org. So just take us through the process of, genesis of the idea to actually putting pen to paper and then saying, oh, wow, I just wrote a book.
Sure. So I was sitting downstairs. I was watching TV one day, and it was probably like October. And I was just sitting there watching TV, and I said, man, Black History Month is coming up, and I really wanted to do something to see about what African Americans have done and the contributions with wrestling. And growing up in Waterloo, you've got the National Hall of Fame Wrestling Museum, the Dan Gable Museum in Waterloo. So I was like, you know what? I text Kyle Klingman up there and I said, hey, would you mind if I brought in some African American wrestlers and we kind of did something, a tribute or something in February? And he was like, yeah, he said, hey, just let me know your thoughts and just run it past me and just break it down and see what we can do. I was like, okay, great. So I did a little research. Nate Carr is my mentor, and Nate Carr has been my mentor since 1999. And so I called up Nate and I said, hey, Nate, I want to do a tribute to you guys. And he goes, okay. And so I said, I did a little research, Nate, and I said the last thing that they did was in 2008 at the Hall of Fame in Stillwater. And he was like, yeah, I was at that. And I looked online, and it was kind of it's like a 20-page pamphlet on the history of African American wrestling. And the chapter on the cars, keep it, a family affair, that's 20 pages itself. And I said, Nate, I think I want to write a book. And Nate was like, I think that's a good idea. So I was like, okay, great. Well, there's a lot of people. And so I said, you know what? I knew that Bobby Douglas had done some historical research and talked to some of these guys. But they were like, man, you need to talk to Bobby Douglas. They kept saying that. And I was like, well, okay, but why? And they said, man, he researched it all the way back to Africa. And I was like, So I got online, the miracle of the internet. I got online and I did my own research because I didn't want to duplicate Coach Douglas. And so I found out that, wrestling started in Nubia. And, and I was like, whoa. And so I followed the progression. And I was like, okay, all right. So that was the first chapter. It was a history lesson. I was like, all right, where do we go from here? The first African-American national qualifier. Okay, Harold Henson. And so I went on Facebook on the internet, and I looked up his lineage and saw that he has a daughter that's still alive in Virginia. So I called her. I told her what I was doing. She was like, yeah. And then so I kind of took it forward a little bit. The first 3 chapters are in order. And after that, I tried to figure out who the first African-American national champ was, Cy Roberts. And actually, he's the first African-American state champ in Iowa as well. He wrestled for University of Iowa. So those first 3 chapters are specifically in chronological order as far as success. And then I kind of bounced around a little bit, I kind of made it exciting. And I think you can attest to this. A couple of those chapters, you probably didn't, I don't know, a couple of the guys in there you might not have known. I don't know if you knew about the Harvey Twisters. But then John Meeks, the first and only African-American 4-timer, in Iowa. So I did some stories that were kind of like, dang, I didn't know that. And the guys in the book even said, and Coach Quint with the Harvey Twisters, he read the book and he said, Kevin, I didn't know some of these things. And I wanted to tell some different stories. Everybody in wrestling knows Jordan Burroughs, most people know Kenny Mondays and the Kevin Jacksons, but they don't know their complete story. They don't know the struggles they went through. They know how successful they were. So I just kind of picked a few people here, and I picked the two females, Alexis Porter and Takara Montgomery. And so I made volume 1 kind of, okay, yeah, I know that, but whoa, I never even heard of them before. And then when I jumped into volume 2, oh, well, let me not. So anyway, I wrote those books. I wrote those chapters, and I kept doing more and more research. And I got up to about 20 interviews. And next thing you know, Black History Month had came and went. And I was like, oh. I was like, well, there goes my idea. And so then I put myself on a time schedule, and I was like, Kevin, if you try to rush this, you're going to mess it up. So I said, you know what, stop. I put, I believe, 12 chapters, I think it is, in volume 1. And then the rest of 12 chapters. And then I said, you know what, Kev, just wait till next year and put out volume 2. So what I did, I hate writing. I hate writing. I barely graduated from college because I didn't want to write my senior paper. I tried to beg my professor. I said, listen, if I don't turn this paper in, will I still pass? And I said, because I got a D. He goes, no, I'll fail you. so I was like, how am I going to do this? Well, being a teacher, there's very smart English teachers at school. So I would write the paper, and one of the department head in English, she turned me on to one of her friends who was a Latin teacher, retired Latin teacher, who's an editor. And so I would write these chapters. I'd write them from my heart. I'd write them from the interviews. Each wrestler, I would call them, explain everything, and I would record it, write it down. I would send it back to them so that they could make the corrections. Then I'd send it to my editor, and the next thing you know, I had a book. And I was like, whoa. And it was so hard to believe.
Somebody who didn't want to write their senior paper just wrote a book. Yeah. Exactly.
It freaked me out. I was like, no way did you just do this, Kevin. Now it took several hours, but the thing was, Jay, if you do something you're passionate about, you know what I mean? It's not hard at all. And I can honestly say, was it hard writing this book? No. I wrote from my heart. And I wrote about something I love. And then I had a really smart editor that tweaked the words. And each chapter that I did, I was like, John, how is my writing? He said, Kevin, it's getting better. And I was like, well, man, okay. And I just kept, and I think you can tell I wrote from my heart. There's all kinds of different books, different genres, and one of the English teachers, we did literature night, she goes, well, what type of genre are you writing from? What is your writing style? I said, I wrote from my heart. I don't know if that's a writing style. And so that's how it all played out. And I'm extremely proud of it. And like I've said a lot of times, the wrestlers that I sent every wrestler a copy, and while I was doing it, it's like Jameel Kelly, Jaden Cox, they were like, hey, Kevin, thanks. Coach Douglas, and he's written 6 or 7 books. He got a copy of both of them. He said, this is awesome. He said, thanks for doing it. He said, thanks for being an ambassador for the sport. And that's come from Coach Douglas, and that was pretty huge for me. Mark Sylvester, that's up there in Minnesota. His story has not really been told. It's in volume 2, the way a lot of people, didn't know. And I had a couple of people say, man, I forgot all about that guy. He doesn't deserve to be forgotten, especially coming out of Minnesota the way he did, and doing what he did, before Mark Hall. He was the Mark Hall before there was Mark Hall, and I allude to that in his chapter. So yeah, that's how it manifested. I wrote from my heart, and when it comes out like that, you can't go wrong when you write it from your heart, because it's you. It's everything that you want, everything you put into it, and like it or not, it's what you've done. And I didn't use a blueprint. I didn't copy anybody because I didn't want to. I didn't want it to seem like, yeah, that book's okay, but it's kind of like this other book. You know what I mean? No, I wrote 2 books that had never been written before, and so I could give back, because clearly, I'm not on the New York Times bestseller, list yet, but I don't, with help from guys like you, but I self-published it. Obviously, I paid out of my pocket. I have no literary agent, no publishing company. I just self-published it. I paid my editor, on a teacher salary. And when I do book signings, I go to wrestling tournaments. Those are my book signings, and I'm very proud of it. And that's just hard work as a wrestler. And that's the thing. I did this as a wrestler, and I grinded. And, nothing was given to me. When I get a shipment in, I can't order 1,000 books at a time. I order, 10 books here, 50 books here, and I take the show on the road, and I set up at a wrestling tournament, and I watch, and I sell my book, and I tell my story. And I honor these guys, and people appreciate that. It doesn't matter what color they are. We appreciate good wrestling. And a friend of mine said, well, are you just going to write African-American books? And I was like, no, I got a couple more coming out. I'm going to work on a book for next year called King of the Mat, which will be the most successful high school wrestling coaches in the country, from not just recently, but I just want to keep writing about wrestling because it's fun. So,
when you look at the makeup of your team, so when you look at the makeup of your team and you got new kids to the sport of wrestling, demographically, how is your team made up? Is it a predominantly an African American school?
No, it's so we had about 35 kids to start out. I'd say it's probably about 15% minority. It's 15-20% minority.
Okay, and then what about the makeup of your wrestling team?
Oh, you're talking about the school or my wrestling team?
Both of them.
Oh, okay. Oh, still no. The school. I'd say the school is probably about 35% minority. And so you're talking about 35 kids on my team. Like I said, I probably had about four or five African Americans on the team. So it's a good mix. And the thing is, like I said, I had two girls on the team also. So it's a fair deal. And the best thing about Midland Valley, this is a mill town. And back in the early 2000s, they had that train accident where that chlorine spilled and it killed 12 people. And a lot of the businesses in this town, they went overseas. They shut the mills down. So this town is old, very, very old. And with any mill town, they're tough. You know what I mean? So, they're just tough. They're like, just the same as being out in the country. These kids in this town, they're resilient, and they've been through a lot. You're talking about their fathers' fathers, their great-great-grandfathers worked in these mills, and a lot of these mills are shut down, so they have to reinvent themselves. You know what I mean? And these are just tough kids, man, and from all walks of life. And then you have some of your well-to-do families also that live in Graniteville also, but it's the best makeup for me because nothing's been given to these kids. And, not taking anything away from, you see a lot of teams that, like, man, that school's got a lot of money. No, my school's got a lot of heart, and we make the money. We go out and we knock on doors. We sell cookie dough. We sell banners. And I make my kids work for it. Even the kids whose parents have money, I still require them to go out and raise money because it's teaching them a life lesson. Everything's not going to be handed to you. And I do that everywhere I go. And I make sure I'm like, if your parents want to write a check for the wrestling fee, fine, but you're going to fundraise also because you got your teammate right next to you whose parents can't write a check. And so you might have to help them out. And nobody had a problem with it. So that's the makeup of the team.
As we turn back and talk about the book, the reason I asked that question, I was curious on how we introduce the sport of wrestling to the African American community in terms of we don't have we have one HBCU with wrestling, and that is a small junior college in Arkansas. The last HBCU to drop was Delaware State. I grew up in the shadow of Hampton University. I went to school at Old Dominion right down the street from Norfolk State, which cut its program my freshman year in college. So for the African American community, the HBCU opportunity does not truly exist. But wrestling in the South, how do you see that as growing? And then we've got Presbyterian, which is about 90 minutes away from where you sit. They're gonna launch a Division I wrestling team for men and women starting next season. And when you look at the opportunities for African American kids in this sport, where do you see their options, and where would you like to see their options grow?
Oh yeah, definitely. Now I'm gonna tell you something, and it's kind of unknown. Allen College here in Columbia, HBCU, their NAIA, they just started last year.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Yeah, Allen University.
Yep.
Yeah, they had their first qualifier this year.
Yeah. So, but your point is very important because it fades away, and I was, it's like I was talking to Carlton Hasselrig, and Carlton said one of his ultimate goals is to go to an HBCU and start a wrestling team. And the opportunities here in the South, just like we talked about, and it's football and basketball, but the thing is, slowly but surely, it's like this, especially because I'm a teacher. I tell my kids, and especially my African American kids, look, man, chances are you're not going to the league, unless you're in the, in the top 1%, so play some other sports, give yourself some different options. If you want to play football, in high school, great. You want to play basketball, great, but do some other things too. And that's where I get to incorporate the wrestling. Now, and there's one thing in Jordan Burroughs' chapter is we as African Americans, and this is just kind of like a general statement. These kids don't like to wear a singlet. It's not manly, and I don't get my Caucasian kids. I don't get them saying, not very few of them say they don't want to wear a singlet. It's the black kids, man. I'm not wearing that. I'm not wearing that thing. I look funny. And I talked with Jordan Burroughs about it. I talked to Carlton Hasselrig about it. They all say the same thing. So that for us is huge. And I hear it so often. And I don't know what it is. And so you know what my response is? Okay, you're out there on that football field wearing those tight pants. I said, what's the difference? Oh, yeah, but that's different. I said, no, it's not. I said, those pants are just as tight as that singlet. And then they think about it. And then, fortunately, I get to use my stud, Raekwon, who took fourth in state this year. I said, look at Rack. I said, you think he's afraid to wear a singlet? I said, you know what? He goes out there and does what he needs to do. And that's how I have to sell it to him. I said, look at me. Do I look like a punk? I said, I said, no. I said, I go out there and do what I got to do. And I said, I don't back down from anybody. And I said, I definitely don't care that I got to wear a singlet. And so I start winning them over. And it's like last year at the end of the season, a lot of the kids are like, hey, coach, I think I'm going to wrestle next year because it's it wasn't cool. It's a new sport, but you got to wear a singlet. Nah, they're too cool for that. And now I've probably had 20 African-American kids. Hey, coach, I'm going to wrestle for you next year. Fantastic. So I have to sell it a couple different ways. You know what I mean? And it's tough. It's tough. And it's a general consensus, but the thing is, the more I push it, and then the best thing for me is they say, coach, what'd you do in high school? I said, well, I took third in state and, and I did what I need to do. And I said, but then I went to college. You went to college on a scholarship? Yep. And what did you make it to nationals? I said, no, I didn't make it to nationals, but guess what? I got a degree. And not only did I get a degree, I went back and got a master's. And I said, the only reason I went to college was to wrestle. I said, and then once I got there, I realized, you know what? I can get this piece of paper that nobody can take away from me. Yeah, that's a deal. And that's what I sell these guys on. I said, you know what, guys? Use your God-given talent to get you to college and get a degree, man. And they buy into it. And this is overall. This is not just at Midland Valley, and that's how I sell it to them. And because a lot of these guys, they're okay at football. Very few of them are studs. I'm like, man, you can go to college on a wrestling scholarship. And that's a great selling point. And I told my son, my son was a two-timer for me. And I said, Jamal, you're going to college to wrestle. I said, you don't have a choice. I said, but here's what you're going to do. I said, you're going to use your talent to get to college. I said, you wrestle for 1 year. And if you don't like it, I said, then you can, then you can put it down. But I said, you're going to graduate. I said, you don't have a choice. And he sure did. He graduated last year from Coker College, and, he didn't make it to nationals. He came one match away. It's all good. I'm proud of him. He walked across that stage, and that's a success. And if I can do that, then it's all good. I don't care if you win a state championship. If I can get you to college and graduate, we're good. You're already a champ.
A lot of champs in your book. One of them, you talked about the first African American qualifier. One, that's the story Harold Henson I wasn't familiar with. A lot of us are familiar with Simon Roberts, especially with the push lately, especially starting with that Hall of Fame back in 2008. I know there is an effort to try to get Simon into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame in one way or another. You've also got good stories about Tim Wright, whose name came up last year after Jake Rezzadori from SIU Edwardsville became an All-American at the Division I level. I'm talking the 2017 season. He was the first D1 All-American at SIUE since Tim Wright, who was a multiple-time champion at the Division II level in that era. As you chronicle the Hasselrig rule in the book as well, which is also an intriguing chapter. I don't want to give all this good stuff away because I want people to read it, but the things that jumped out at me, I think the one chapter that kind of piqued my interest the most was I was having a conversation with a wrestling fan about Fletcher Carr and the University of Tampa, and then I'm sitting there, I start reading the book, and I'm like, this answered some questions. I think Fletcher Carr's story, you could probably, with as many boys as that were in that Carr family wrestled anyway, you could have your entire encyclopedia of volumes of Pathfinder, the Carr edition. But Fletcher's story is interesting, and again, I do know that Jimmy Carr ended his career at Alabama, but that's one that a lot of people don't realize that. He transferred from Kentucky. Him and his brother had a little bit of a falling out, and Jimmy Carr finished at Alabama. He didn't finish at Kentucky. So when going through these chapters and stories, what was probably the biggest thing that made you go, really? I didn't know that.
Honestly, it was, and I mean this seriously. Every chapter had something that I was like, I didn't know that. And it was at the point. It's like, okay, we're talking about the cars. With Jimmy Carr beating the Russian, gold, the Olympic gold medalist, the Olympic champion, while Jimmy Carr was in high school. I didn't know that. I knew he was good. I knew he made the Olympic team, but I didn't know he beat the Olympic champion. He tied him once and then beat him. And I didn't know the falling out either. And it was so funny to listen to Joe Carr and Fletcher Carr tell me the story. And they're like, Joe was like, yeah, Jimmy didn't want to listen to Fletcher. We had to let him go. And I go, that had to be hard. I had to do what I had to do. And I was like, wow, and it doesn't matter. And so it's those little things like that were like, man, I didn't know that he was that good. It's like with the chapter on Twist and Shout with the Harvey Twisters. You saw those back 2 pages of everybody that's come out of the Harvey Twisters. It's insane. And Coach Quint, when I interviewed him last year, he's like, there's this kid named Kamal Bey that's really good. He said, keep an eye on him, and look at him now. He's smoking it. And I was just like, whoa, that's the kid he was talking about. He's on track. I think I'm right. He won the junior world title in Greco last summer, or not last summer. Probably
yes, he did. Yeah, it was last year in Tampere, Finland, and it was he scored. I think because I was there, I was doing the broadcast with it, and I remember the referees and the people that were watching the event, the international people, they're talking about his point totals, and they're like, 61 points. He scored 61 points in Greco. Scored 61 points in 4 matches. It was they were just so impressed that he was just go for just step and throw. Let's lock up and let's roll. So yeah, Kamal Bey definitely a human highlight film of Greco-Roman wrestling. Now, other things about the series. Now again, I'm going to go pick up volume 2 here in a bit. You had alluded to Marcus Levester's in it. So when you're going through, you talked about the first 3 chapters were in order for a reason, and then when you go down the line of who you're discovering, what makes you say, okay, I want to talk to this person. I want to talk to this person. I want to talk to this person.
Okay, so like Tim Wright, it's funny, and people read it. You see probably about 60-75% of these stories start out with me telling how I know the person, you know? And so the thing is, it's like with Tim Wright. I remember when I was just standing there watching him when he was about to wrestle my teammate. And I knew he was a legend, and I never knew what happened to him. And so it intrigued me because I was like, no, this dude was a stud. He was the first 4-time NCAA champion. Where is he? And so, and I joke with people, I wrote a book that I wanted to read. I wrote a book that there's this information that I want, and I couldn't find it. So you know what? If I can't find it, I'm going to write it. And so that's what I did. It's like, you know, with Lee Kemp, I had no idea he beat Gable when he was 18 years old, and Gable had already won a gold medal. I didn't know that. And you know, the thing is, I'm humble enough. Yeah, I've wrestled since I was a little kid. I wrestled in high school and college, and I've been coaching since 1999. But guess what? Kevin Emily doesn't know everything. And so I'm humble enough to say, man, I didn't know that. And if it was something that I thought was intriguing from my point of view, as far as, okay, Kevin, you know a lot, but what don't you know? Man, put that in a book. And so that's how I addressed it. Kevin Jackson, KJ, he's a friend of mine. My son was going to walk on at Iowa State back in the day. KJ did my wrestling camps. So I had personal experience with these guys. Greg Jones is in volume 2. And, he did my camp after he was a 3-timer. And I was like, man, that dude's good. But I didn't know exactly what happened his sophomore year at Nationals. I didn't know his mind frame. I didn't know how he came back and never lost another match. But it's stories like that, like, dang, man, I didn't know that. In every chapter, I believe I wrote it to the sense that there's something in there you probably don't know. And that's what makes me smile. It's like, some of the wrestlers, some of these famous world-class wrestlers, that they're in the book, and they text me and say, Kevin, man, that was good. And I didn't know that. And that's why I know that, Kevin, you did something, man. You gave back. You told a story. You told a story about our sport that people didn't know. And that's how I wrote it, and it's like the chapter in volume 2 with Tab Thacker. I knew he died, but I didn't know how. And I talked to his widow. I talked to his brother, and it's like, wow. And I didn't know how agile he was. I talked to Coach Guzzo. Coach Guzzo and I, his coach at NC State, man, we talked for probably about 45 minutes. And I had met Coach Guzzo before at a camp, but I had never talked about Tab Thacker. And I got, so for me, I was a kid in a candy store. I could not believe I got to talk to these guys. I was like, man, this is crazy. And so, yeah, that's how I looked at it. To answer your question, I mean, I talk a lot, so I apologize, but that's how I looked at it. Kevin, tell some stories that people don't know. Ask the questions that aren't out there, because, we all like to read. I think most of us like to read. Well, okay, their story. Well, is there anything else to that story? And there is. Just like, everybody's life story could be a book. I honestly believe that. It's just a matter of how you approach it and how you highlight it. So that's all I did, was just try to just, tell the story in a way that people are like, man, I didn't know they did that. So,
side note, question about Tab Thacker. Can you tell me 2 of his character names in 2 of the movies he's most known for?
Oh, man. I was just, it was, Finch.
Yeah.
Finch
oh, you got that one. See, I didn't know if you were going to get Finch, because that's the one. That's the one that I refer to most is okay. Finch. Okay, the other.
No, I'm not even gonna lie, man. I don't know what he was in Police Academy.
He was now and here's the thing. He was Little Tommy Conklin, but everybody just called him House. So
yeah, okay. There you go. That's right. Yeah.
Wildcats is one of my favorite. I haven't seen Wildcats probably let's see, I'm 30. I probably shouldn't have watched it when I watched it, because its rating was a little above my age at the time, but I don't think I've seen that movie in like almost 25, 30 years. So I'm gonna have to go write that one down. That's one I'm gonna have to watch that one with my wife because she just loves my movie selections.
That's and so I did 2 highlight videos to promote the book, and so the last one I put it on Facebook, and I didn't have any wrestling footage of Tab Thacker, so I slow motioned when they were taping him up when it was him and Wesley Snipes in the locker room taping him up, and I did like a 5-second pan from like his legs all the way up, man. And his widow really appreciated that, man. I mean, she shared it because there's no wrestling footage. I can't find any, of him anywhere. Obviously I'm sure there is, but so when I took that from Wildcats, I mean, it really meant a lot to her that I put that in there. So I just with Tab Thacker and Harold Henson, I wanted to make sure I did it right. And Harold Henson's daughter was like, she's like, Kevin, I have no problem telling you the story, but please make sure that our dad is shown in a positive light. That you honor him the right way, because it meant a lot to their name's Leslie Gottsman. And it meant a lot to her, and I said, absolutely. And she was very pleased with it. And so between that chapter, those are 2 that made me the most nervous. Harold Henson and Tab Thacker's, because they're deceased. And I didn't get to hear from their words, and it had to get the approval of Tab Thacker's widow and his brother. And then with that one, and see, with Harold Henson's story, she showed it to all her sisters, all her siblings first before I got approval. So it took a little while to get down back. She's like, okay, Kevin, it looks good, but I got to show it to the rest of the family and see what they say. So yeah, each chapter I wrote, man, it's more than that chapter. It's what led up to finally tracking them down, talking to them, making the changes, and then getting them to give me the thumbs up, because, those guys that are active right now, those guys are busy, and so each chapter after I wrote it, I made sure and send it back to the wrestler. So the one thing I did, make sure of, is that no one can say, you know what, Kevin, that's not right. That part of the book's not right. I've made some mistakes, but the thing is, that part, no one can refute the fact that, well, man, at least he got it right because he talked to the wrestler himself. And I mean, because some things that I had mentioned in some of these chapters, I thought was right, or maybe it was a score, or maybe I missed out on a match. And it's like Greg Jones. He was like, hey, I went 2-2 at Nationals, and this is the guy I lost to. I was like, you sure? I missed it. I thought he went 1-2, and I was like, oh, he's right, man. And the chapter on KJ when he talks about Royce Alger, I tried to soften that up. And KJ was like, he said, I said, KJ, I'm done with your chapter, and he goes, let me read it. I go, okay, and I said, how's it look? And he goes, that's not what I said. He goes, this is what I said. And he said, and print it. I said, all right. I mean, they had that nice little feud, him and Alger. And,
well, that's putting it lightly. Nice little feud.
But, and he, like I said, I softened it up, and he's like, no. He said, no. He said, Kev, if you're going to print it how I said it. I was like, yes, sir. So anyway, man. But yeah, that's it. And it makes me smile, Jason, it makes me smile because, I got to tell guys stories that they don't toot their own horn. You know what I mean? And I think that's just us as wrestlers. We don't like to toot our own horn. Yeah, we do things, but at the end of the day, we just wrestle. We wrestle because that's what we do. And, but somebody's got to sit back and say, hey, man, look what these guys did. And that's what I'm most proud of, is I'm able to tell stories.
One thing that this book is for anybody, whether you're,
yes,
male, female, black, white, any race. It's got some great educational and informational topics here. Again, I picked some things out of here that I didn't know, and I've been doing this for a long time. But again, with the idea behind it being Black History Month, and you've got future volumes coming. My question is, again, it circles back to introducing the sport or bringing the sport as an opportunity for African American kids in this country, and obviously globally. But as far as this country goes, do you think this can serve a purpose in being able to say, hey, here are some role models? Because we've got where I grew up, Allen Iverson was a huge name where I grew up in Virginia. You've got professional football players. You've got all sorts of athletes that LeBrons. You've got Michael Jordan. You've got all these people that they grow up and they say, yeah, this is who I want to be like. I want to be like Mike. There's a whole Gatorade marketing campaign, be like Mike. And wrestling, we haven't had that. So what did you have an underlying reason saying, these books can give African American kids an opportunity to open doors to role models that they can identify with on the wrestling mats, with whether it be they're from the same state, whether it be from the same economic background, whether it be it's a relative. I mean, how do you set this up for I guess for role models for future Black wrestlers?
It's like this. It's not all about putting the basketball through the hoop and being in the NBA and and that's great, or running the ball, and being on TV. I just wanted to show that, hey, you know what? There are a lot of successful athletes. They just don't, in particular, like we're talking about, there are a lot of successful Black athletes. We just don't play basketball and football. We do other things. And I kind of reference his book sometimes as these are superheroes. They're superheroes. And you look at their story, because you look at a lot of those stories, you see how those kids started off. They started off, some of them just started wrestling in 9th grade. When you read the story of Jamel Kelly, never a state champ in California, never even a Division I All-American. And, and I put that part on Facebook. And then in the span of a little over a year, he beat 7 NCAA champions. One of them was an Olympic bronze medalist. That's a superhero, and he's not running the ball. He's not shooting it into the basket, and he did his thing. And it just lets you know. And maybe wrestling is not your sport, but guess what? Well, you can read this book and say, hey, you know what? I don't wrestle, but I like to play tennis. I like to play baseball. I like to bowl, or even for the females that read it. Well, you know what? I do like volleyball. I do like softball. Well, there you go. But I don't have anybody to look up to. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Just look within yourself and look at the stories of success of somebody who excelled in a sport that didn't know anything about it. And that's you. That's you. So do it. And that's what, I really want to try, next year to get my book into the school systems, as many as I can. And, I got to push for that, because it's a story of success from someone who a lot of people didn't come from much. And, you got different socioeconomic backgrounds, of people who didn't come from much. Poverty doesn't have a color. You know what I mean? So the thing is, a lot of the people in the book, they came from nothing, or they didn't know anything. Lee Kemp was adopted, was adopted and went from town to town, family to family. There's so many kids out there that are adopted that, man, my life isn't nothing. My life, no, you look at Lee Kemp then. How about that? You just look at what Lee Kemp did. He was adopted. He wasn't, oh, woe was me. He was the outcast at his high school. He did what he needed to do. A lot of people in these books were told no. So, for anybody, and, like, asking particularly African Americans, look here, man, do something different. Do something different, because at the end of the day, a lot of the pro athletes, they end up broke because they spend all their money, and they waste all their money. Earn it. Be a wrestler. Earn it. Unless you're Jordan Burroughs or somebody like that, You win the gold medal when you get $500,000. But everybody's not going to do that. And the thing is, but it writes your ticket, and that's one of the things that I wanted to show was that you can do other things and be successful, and not only just in a sport. It's just in your everyday life. You can do what you want to do, and it's like with the Hasselrig story. Okay, I didn't even. Here's the thing, and see, my very next book is going to be called The Giant Killer, and it's going to be the complete story from birth until now of Carlton Hasselrig. I specifically didn't talk about the bad things in these books because I wanted to celebrate them. And then, and obviously, I mean, the chapters are, between 10 and 15 pages, except that Family Affairs, 20 pages. I didn't talk about the things in their life that really, really went wrong. And that's why they're kind of like teasers, because these chapters, they don't tell every single thing about the wrestlers. They tell a good portion of it. There's some stuff, about a lot of guys that I was like, you know what? And they're like, hey, you can put that in. I was like, no, you know what? I'm just going to stick to this right here. And so it gives the sense of, hey, there's some more to this story. It's kind of like that movie you watch and it's over and you're like, man, I hope there's going to be a sequel. and all you got to do is do a little bit more research. And I admit that. So it's not like I sit there and say, yep, I put every single thing about my life in this book. No, I kind of sprinkled it. It was pretty detailed, just like you said, because I had to make it enticing. I just didn't want to make it a book that's like, man, I already know everything in this book. But at the same time, it's like with Carlton Hasselrig, you wait till that book comes out. It's like, whoa, I spent a week up there last summer interviewing him. It was the first time I ever got to meet Carlton Hasselrig, and I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. So I was like, man. But I got to go up there and talk with his high school coach, with some of his kids, with some of his lifelong friends. I got to see the house where he grew up, talk to his uncle. And so I got down and dirty, and he told me the real truth about some things that you can't find them anywhere. I had to find the articles. I went to their local newspaper, and this was before the internet, and the reporter, he dug in there and he printed the articles for me, and so I have this complete life story they were working on, and they came to me and asked me to do it. And Carlton wasn't ready to tell his story even 2 years ago. He wasn't ready to tell it. He wasn't really ready to share it with the whole world. And when he read my book, he told his wife. He didn't even tell his wife that I was writing that chapter on him. And he said, hey, Michelle, read this. And she read it, and she said, Carlton said, hey, I think he's the guy. And she sent me an email. She said, hey, Kevin, I read your chapter. Carlton's been looking for somebody to tell his complete life story, but he couldn't find the right person. We think it's you. And they said, I asked her why. And she said, because you write from your heart. And Carlton needs somebody that's going to tell his story the right way. And it's good, Jason. It's like, when I read the articles, I'm like, whoa. And it's some of the stuff that's went on with him. The only place it's printed is in the Johnstown newspaper, buried in a file. Can't even find it on the internet. So, stuff like that. If I get the opportunity to do that, I'm living the dream. I made the Olympics. I reached the top for me, because the top for me is helping people and sharing things and telling somebody's story because they either didn't want to tell it themselves, because they're too humble, or they didn't know how to tell it. And so that's what I'm proud of, man.
Been talking with Kevin Emily, the author of Pathfinders Volume 1 and 2, head wrestling coach at Midland Valley High School in South Carolina. Check out the books at optionalstart.org. While we were on here, I actually went and ordered Volume 2, the paperback version, because it travels easier. So I went there, and I don't need you to give it to me. I want to buy the thing. I'm all about...
I'm going to. But thanks.
Well, I already bought it, so you got to keep the money. So where else can they find information about what you're doing with your coaching? where they can read more. I mean, obviously optionalstart.org is the website, but where else can they find you? And if they've got a story to tell that might be up your alley when it comes to future volumes, where can they find you?
If you go on YouTube and type in Kevin Emily, just type in my name, Kevin Emily and Pathfinder, you'll see the interviews right there. And then you can, and on my website, there's my phone number's on there, and you can just contact me. Or if you're on YouTube, just send a message and let me know, because I'm always interested in more stories. I'm very accessible. Or you can just go on Facebook and just type my name in and send me a message. That's the best way to reach me. And if you go on YouTube and watch the actual interviews, I did like 5 different interviews chronicling the progression of the book. I think you find it pretty interesting. And then those 2 videos are on there, highlight videos also.
As I'm looking to see, I'm just scrolling through it here real quick. Okay, yep, there it is. Got it. Good deal. You got some Hasselrig there, and I was just hoping to see some Finch.
Watch the latest one, the Pathfinder Volume 2 video, and it should have a picture of, I think, Jordan Burroughs, the highlight video, and Finch. You'll see how it's 5 seconds of Finch, big Finch, panning up from the thighs up.
Man, I love that line. Man, how'd your folks let you get this big? Are you kidding? He probably ate his folks.
Jason, they said that guy was just so happy, man. They said he was just a jolly fellow. And I really wish I could have met him, because, he was larger than life. He was larger than life. And that's the thing that, a lot of the people in North Carolina, when I post the chapters and stuff, and his family, they're like, man, that's cool. They love that guy in North Carolina. I mean, he loved a lot of places, but in North Carolina, they loved him. They loved him. And it was gone too soon, man. And it just, when stuff like that happens, man, to good people, I make it a habit of not asking why. But it's like with JQ. I don't understand it, man. I don't understand how a young kid can go to sleep and not wake up, and he had so much potential, And when they leave you like that, man, you're just like, well, that don't seem right, And it's just one of them things, man. It's just like with Hasselrig, he I mean, not Hasselrig, with Thacker. He didn't die an easy way. It was very painful, and he loved everybody, man. They said he literally would give the shirt off his back. His brother said he watched him do it, man. So anyway, I'm thankful for it. And yeah, so check out Finch. He's in that video.
We'll do. Kevin, Emily, thanks for the time, man. And we'll definitely have to follow up again when you got another couple hours to spare, because this is just entertaining and enjoyable.
Thank you, Jason. I really appreciate it.
And in my hand sits Pathfinder Volume 2. As I said, I was going to order the book. I did order the book, and I've got Pathfinder Volume 2, The Journey Continues, by Kevin Emily. You can also, again, check that out. As we pitched on the end of this program, Kevin Emily gave us a lot of good information on his backstory as a wrestling coach and the inspiration behind these first 2 volumes of his book series called Pathfinder. Again, great job, great stuff, and looking forward to reading number 2, maybe as I have some R&R time as I'm celebrating my 8th anniversary coming up here. I'm going to be heading down to the Lone Star State to hang out for a couple days and generally just do nothing. Going to probably do some reading, going to be watching some Game of Thrones, and checking out a honky tonk and some beach things down there on the coast. So a lot of things coming up, so I'll have time to read Volume 2. Looking forward to it. Like to thank you for spending your time with me. No, I'm not closing the show just yet with the sign-off, but this is the Short Time Wrestling Podcast, the flagship podcast of the Mad Talk Podcast Network. And if you like everything you hear, I want you to, 1, tell somebody, and 2, I'd like you to consider contributing to this network of wrestling on-demand media, putting out hundreds of shows each year. I think last year we hit we were close to 444 shows we put out last year on the network. Not sure if we'll hit that mark or not. I know we've put well over 130, 140 out already in 2018. And if you like what you hear, I'd encourage you to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, as it may be known to some of you, and consider contributing to the network at mattalkonline.com/contribute. $1, $2, $5, $10 a month, whatever you feel this content is worth. You become a team member, you'll get some pretty cool gear depending on your level of giving. Like, for example, the $1 level, you give me $1 a month, you give me $12 a year for this stuff. And again, this show, the Short Time Wrestling Podcast specifically, the only ad you're going to hear is at the very end, and that is because I have a great partnership with Compound and Compound Clothing. They provide part of those swag bags, basically, the hats and the shirts for the patrons of this program. So it's not like they're sponsoring in terms of throwing money that this thing can happen, but that funding comes from you, the listener. And you can do that again, madtalkonline.com/contribute. You can do a one-time contribution, or you can be one of our team members by joining the Patreon campaign. Again, that link available, madtalkonline.com/contribute. Other things that we've got here rolling. The Daily Wrestling News is up over 1,000 members. Yeah, 1,000 of you each morning open up your email and you get curated daily wrestling news first thing in the morning. I talked to my buddy Frank Lapoli out in Virginia the other day, and he goes, hey, Jason, I wake up, I go into school. He actually kind of sounds like this. Yeah, I get up at 6, and I'll sit there, and I'll sit there and I'll wait in the parking lot before it's time to go in. I'll just look at my phone, I'll read your newsletter. So if Frank can do it, and this guy is one of those like computer, let's just say before he knew how to use a computer or a phone, he was calling me about 150 times a month back when we were starting the Virginia Challenge like almost 20 years ago. So if Frank can figure it out, I know you can. MattTalkOnline.com/news. You sign up. It's free. And again, if you want to throw something towards the contribution world at that contribute link, by all means, please do so. But no cost for the newsletter. And I looked it up last night. And actually, as the time I record this, it is May 8th. We recorded the interview about a week and a half ago with Kevin and Emily. May 8th, so 3 years ago, oddly enough, I started the newsletter on my anniversary, which makes really no sense at all that I was actually working on the anniversary or recording this on my 8-year anniversary. But 13,480 news links have been sent out. That is over 4,000 stories, 4,000 bits of wrestling information a year sent to you for free. MattTalkOnline.com/news. And if you like it, again, tell a friend, share the tweets, do what you need to do. I'd like to hear your feedback. Upcoming guests, again, we just had Adam Hunter released. We've got Joan Fulp and Andrea Yamamoto coming out to talk about the growth of women's wrestling at the high school level. Also, big news is North Central College, a Division III school in Naperville, Illinois. Fear the Bird adds women's wrestling as its 27th varsity sport. Missouri has added girls high school wrestling, so good news coming out of the women's wrestling movement. Oh, deep breaths, deep breaths, deep breaths. Shout out to my boy Richard Immel, who has finally finished up his graduate school. I spent 7 years as an undergrad. No chance you're going to get to see me back in a classroom again. Okay, I'd been there, done that. I was in college so long, I had 3 different university presidents sign my degree. Nope, bad stand-up comedy for me. But that's basically my calls to action and the shout-outs. That's, Richard Immel. You got yourself a graduate degree soon enough, my friend. Soon enough, that podcast with him and I will also be coming out. And not a whole lot to do with wrestling, but if you like beer and Game of Thrones, this may be up your alley because that's pretty much what we're experts in. Anyway, I'll throw him under the bus later when we finally get that show started. Well, as far as the rest of the show goes, I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me. Again, if you like the show and you like the network, hit us up with the contributions at MattTalkOnline.com/contribute. You go on our thank you page. You get mentioned here on the show. You get stickers for $1. You get a certain level. You get a Matt Talk t-shirt. It's that super soft tri-blend stuff from Compound. You also have options. You get a hat. We've gone with Scully's now. We're getting away from the baseball caps because I realize as you get older in a winter sport, a lot fewer baseball caps than there are more as you start losing the hair a little bit, you want to keep the head warm, like Kevin Claunch up there at Blood Round. Get a Matt Talk Scully, nice little toboggan cap that you can wear. You can get that at a certain level of giving. The pint glasses, I owe Rob Roy a pint glass, and you also get the opportunity to get those preview guides that I do. I added Division III this year, so we got the Fargo guide, the D1 guide, and the D3 guide, all as part of that team membership at various levels of giving. Again, beating you over the head with it, but that's how the lights stay on with the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. MattTalkOnline.com/contribute. And again, now I can finally say it. I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me because you've always got time for Short Time. And the Bison Turf is now open. The Short Time Wrestling Podcast is proudly outfitted by Compound Clothing. Shirts, singlets, custom gear orders, everything you need. Call up Cliff and the crew at cmpteamwear.com. First time listening? Well, you can change that by going to matttalkonline.com/getshorttime to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or listen on your favorite podcatcher at matttalkonline.com/listen.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to matttalkonline.com.